Hello everybody, welcome back to Gelvin Valley. We left off chisel plowing this field. I'm gonna go from here and head up the hill, I think, to head up the hill across the road and take care of these fields over here, I think. I don't know what the right order is to, oops, watch out for the cars. Well, it sure goes a whole lot quicker running the chisel plow in the field than it does the combine, so, I set this up for renting this equipment for 5 hours. Well, maybe I'll be surprised. Who knows how long it'll take. Something I'm wondering about, though, well, yeah, I don't know. There's all kinds of placeable areas on this map. And I've been wondering if maybe I could plant some trees on there. I gotta think about what would be most expensive. I'm kind of used to the Seasons mod in Farm Sim 17, which slowed the growth of trees way down. So what I'm wondering is, I don't remember how it was back in Farm 15. If I planted some trees, I wonder just how long it would take for them to grow, and whether I would get any decent money if I had a bunch of them. And if I want to put myself through the headache of, although I guess I do have a trailer mod in here that I could rent that has auto loading capability. So if I put down a log, maybe it wouldn't be too bad. I'd even be able to, I'll just have to cogitate on this and figure out what to do with my $16,645 that I have in the bank. Probably should just put it against debt because my loan is maxed out. Pulling this hill. And I really like these hills. It's such a wonderful view. Last video I commented at one point I made a mistake. I backed up with the chisel plow tines still in the ground. That's a huge no-no. If you do that in real life, the pressure of having those sitting in the dirt with the power of the machinery, it would just snap a lot of them off. I've often thought about trying to create a mod that somehow would simulate that. Don't know how hard that would be, or if it could be made universal to. The thing of it is, the game doesn't have a chisel plow piece of equipment, at least not that I'm aware of, that's in the game. But I think the effect would be similar with cultivators. You just don't back up with the thing in the ground. You can pull it forward all day long. I mean, you got to be careful of that too, but generally speaking, you're not going to harm it if you're just pulling it forward. But going backwards with it curved the way it is, that just isn't the way it's designed to work. So yeah. But if I made a mod, trying to think if it'd be pretty hard to get the tines and literally to bust it off without a whole lot of modification of the underlying mod or underlying model, if you will. But maybe it could be, I don't know, disabled. I do have the damage mod in here, maybe it could talk to the damage mod somehow, but even if this thing is, I guess I don't know that I've ever damaged a cultivator or some field implement a lot. I think it says, yeah, my ripper here is currently on 0%, but I wonder if it would still work. There's a rock, look at it. I wonder if it would still work if it was damaged at 100%. And if it ceased working, maybe then that would work. I don't know if anybody here had Farm Sim 09. Maybe it was this way with Farm Sim 11 too. It was this annoying thing, but if you drove too fast in the field, the equipment would automatically disconnect from your tractor. And I think it was the game's way of saying, we're not going to let you just go drive excessive speeds in the field. Which, like I say, it was pretty annoying. I like it better now, where it caps the speed at which you can drive things in the field and what have you. It just puts a cap instead of doing the annoying thing of disconnecting your equipment. But maybe that would be something we could do. If the player backed up like this chisel plow that we're using, or a cultivator, backed it up when it's down, maybe then, we could have the script disconnect it and put something in there that would like disable it for a while until it was fixed. But without the damage mod, see, that's just the thing. I'm wondering how that would feasibly work so that the player would have to fix it. It's one thing if you got a damage mod in there, there's already a mechanism to fix something. But the base game itself doesn't have, I don't think, the means to do it. Oh, I think I hear someone knocking at the door. Apologies, I'll be right back. How's my son coming home from a whitewater rafting trip? So I'm sure he's going to have some things to share. He looks like he's still in one piece, so that's a good thing. So I don't know how hard it would be to make a mod like that. Maybe nobody would care. I'm just making sure I lift my chisel plow before I back up. And probably something like that, if a person misstepped upon the key, they would accidentally damage it and it would just be upsetting. I don't know. But I'll throw a question out there. From the days when I was on the forum for FSU UK, I spent a lot of time there back when it was a viable entity. And asking or sharing mod ideas many times was a no-no. And I'm not sure why. I think it's because there are people out there that will get pushy and try to demand that somebody make them a mod. And of course, nobody's going to make anyone a mod unless they really, really want to do it. Nobody can be forced to do anything. So I think sometimes it was just to eliminate some of that extraneous conversation, if you will. I never minded the sharing of ideas. I always thought that was pretty interesting, whatever creative ideas, some people would come up with in terms of mod ideas. I mean, there were some terrific ideas out there, but kind of like, we've talked here before, it all depends on the means and ability and time and all of that as to whether, someone's able to pull it off. And sometimes, anytime you have something you're trying to do that's maybe a little bit different from how the game engine was designed, You know, there's a lot of things to take into account, and giants only reveal just a little bit, you know, or bits and pieces, and you know sometimes it's just tough to figure something out. But it's still kind of cool to talk through the ideas. So, what are, you know, if you could make a mod of something, what would it be? And and I know people think about this, so I'm kind of curious if anybody hears this, you know, what they might put in the comments. Um, I think I've commented before. My pile of mod ideas is very big, but there's only so many hours in the day, and you know I may not have enough talent to do even a fraction of you know what I like to do. Like I don't know how to do 3D models, for example. You know, like running Blender, I think it's called. You know, my idea of Blender is what we have in the kitchen. You know, to mix cookie dough or whatever. But there's another kind of blender, and I can do a tiny bit in it, but not really enough to, you know, it's one thing to put a model in there and cut a piece off or something like that, but let me try to put GPS. Whoa, that's pretty wide. Let me get that narrowed up. That's still pretty wide. Maybe offset. Yeah, that should work. Try to help myself out a little bit. Go back and forth across this hill. Probably kind of like how we'd work it in real life. We try not to go downhill with it. We probably go side to side. I'm not sure how much difference it would make on a, you know, in terms of erosion. Maybe it would. I know in the planting, you know, up on the farm, we tried to plant across the hills, where my uncles did. I think for the sake of erosion, you know, wherever they could, to follow the contours of the ground. But someday, I think I'd really enjoy learning how to make a 3D object. And it's probably going to be in Blender. Maya costs thousands of dollars. I think there's people that can get a student's license, but I'm long out of school. There's no way I can get a student's license with a straight face, you know. So, so I'd have to pay through the nose. But Blender is free. It's continuously updated. And the hard part just is a game isn't necessarily designed for Blender, and the giants don't really support it all that much, which is a shame. You know, as much modding functionality they've built into their game, you know, one would think they'd be a little bit more supportive of Blender, some of the free software, which is what Joe Q Public would have access to, versus spending a ton of money on something like Maya. But for whatever reason, um, they don't tend to support Blender all that much. So it's been up to the modding community to try to figure out how to work around that, if you will. But I think it'd be fun to make 3D objects. And probably, any guesses on what the first 3D object would be? Some of you probably already know. As much as I've enjoyed rock work, you know, a rock is kind of there. We're just going by one. A rock is a pretty simple object, I would think. You know, some of them that I have in here, they're just simple little spheres, you know, little circular objects that someone made for me, which don't seem like they'd be that hard to make, but for me, I mean, they're impossible at the moment because, you know, I just don't know the program. I've noticed, you know, looking at the mods back on FSUK, they had their own site to release mods, and even other mods, you know, that hit the modding hub nowadays. I think a lot of times, you know, when you see a mod that is a ramp of some kind or a weight, you know, for the equipment, that those tend to be gateway type objects for maybe new modders. Probably it's obviously not going to be more. It's not going to be. I'm saying this wrong. It's going to be way easier to make a simple shaped object, kind of like a ramp, versus, making a tractor on your first go. Now, that doesn't hold true in all cases. I think everybody maybe knows that Bullet Bill, a very top tier, respected mapper, makes stellar maps. Well, he recently got into 3D modeling, and he now makes a lot of his own assets, for his maps. But one of his first projects, as I understand it, was to make a new combine. I mean, right out of the gate. I mean, that's just incredible. Who does that? He did. Whereas most of us probably would just choose a much simpler object, and maybe he did. Maybe he did make some simpler objects at first, as he was kind of learning. Oh, there's a big one. Yowza. That's a big rock. But his first publicly released mod, I think, was actually a Massey Ferguson combine, one of the older ones, and I think another modder had taken a stab at it and got the dimensions off a bit, so he wanted to try to take his stab at it himself. So, but yeah, I'd like to learn how to make 3D objects. Rocks first, but I don't think I'd make something like a tractor. Like if I learned how and got decent at it, I think there are some other map asset type stuff, I'd want to create. I've mentioned on here a number of times I worked on Lone Oak Farms in my growing up years, which was a grassy farm. So probably anything related to grass seed that we don't currently have would be something I'd be interested in making. So for example, like a grass seed cleaner in a warehouse, where that's a machine that has like a series of screens in it that the grass seed goes through to become clean seed. So maybe to create something like that, I think I would like to do if I knew how. Um, and there's other types of agriculture that I think would be fun to explore that we just don't have in game right now. Now the Giants are branching out more in the types of agriculture that they support. I think Farm Sim 22 now has the ability to raise grapes, which is pretty cool. That's a whole new type of equipment. Um, so maybe in the future they'll continue expanding. You can just look at the history over time. I think the first version of the game, all you could do was wheat. So they've added other grains, other types of grains. They've added, just added lots of stuff over time as they've continued to develop the franchise. And by the way, on that, there have been a lot of people that have kind of complained about that. Maybe that, it's up to the modders to bail out giants or to rescue their game or whatever. And, I don't know what to say about all that or where the truth exactly lies. All I know is the people that make the game, they're the professionals. They do this for a living. And so I think a lot of their decision making, and I have no idea, I'm just guessing, in terms of the inner workings of the company, if you design a game for people to mod, well, then let them mod. You don't want to just do everything for them and then have nothing for the modder to do. So, okay, so somebody wants a new crop in the game, well, let them create it, now over time they've added stuff, but I do wonder if some of it's been flat out deliberate, because there is so much enjoyment, a person can have in creating something new for the game, and maybe some modders look at it that way and grouse or say, well, why did the Giants do this? Well, they may have had a reason for not doing it, just so you could do it. And sometimes too, they will accuse Giants of theft, of idea theft. When modders do something for a number of years, and then the Giants add something to the game, that appears to copy what a modder did. Well, I can't prove that it's not copying, but I don't know that anybody can prove that it is copying either. It's may have been in the grand plan at one point. For example, in Farm Sim 22, they have now the ability to pick up rocks. Actually, when I saw that, I thought that was pretty cool. I didn't think they were copying me. I mean, I made this rocks farm mod. Um, Now, theirs functions a little differently than what mine does, but it's still kind of cool if they put that in there. I'm not going to accuse them of copying, because anybody, I think, with an ounce of sense, if you study agriculture, you're going to know there are rocks in fields. You're going to know there's all these different crops. You're going to know all this stuff, and it becomes a judgment call as to what you're going to put in the game versus not. So just one of those people. I think sometimes people like to complain too. Always room for complainers. Whew, pulled out another big rock. Yeah, I'm gonna have some work to do once we get done with all this, and a lot of rocks to pick up. So some other types of farming, that's what I got started talking about. If I can make a 3D model. My wife works part-time at a company that is a turf and a nursery type company. So they have these fields, that look like one massive green lawn. And as they sell it, they go out there and they cut it with these special machines, these knives, that cut it off up from the soil and puts it in rolls or these big slabs and put it on pallets, and then they get trucked to their customers or to landscapers or whatever, to be put into yards. It's instant lawn, if you will. Well, I have never seen that in Farming Simulator, and so if I knew how to make a 3D object of some kind, it might be kind of cool to make some objects for that particular industry. It would take a lot more than just making a 3D object, too. I mean, you'd need to create other types of objects around that style of farming, if you will. But it can be done if someone has enough skill and time to do it. I think another thing I'd love to do, and there are some modders that have done this, I think we tend, a lot of us as we play this game, some of us, it's because we always had a fondness for farming, or we have memories from real farm experience. So we'd like to see those same experiences in game. And some of them are, like a map, maybe it's a particular area that we'd love to see a map of because we farm there in real life. So, hence you'll have like the Lone Oak Farm map or Coral Park Farms, both that were made by Bullet Bill based on real locations. But a lot of it's equipment too. Maybe if you farm during a certain time era, there's a style of equipment you would love to see in game. And I think the Giants maybe have done a little bit of that over the years, but by and large, I think they have tended to stick with the more modern machinery that they model and put into the game versus vintage. Oh, another big rock. There's some big ones in here. So it's been primarily up to modders to kind of make some of the more vintage equipment that you ever see in game. So, and I wasn't, I mean, I'm not that old that I remember this era, but I don't know that I've ever seen, for example, an old stationary threshing machine. Just haven't seen it. And I mean, there would be, like I say, some modding issues to solve because, a stationary threshing machine, which they used back in the day. Oh, oops, I can't go through there. They would have used those, depending on what region you were, maybe up through the 1940s. That's probably about the latest that they used those. So, well, my grandfather had a stationary threshing machine that he got when he retired, actually a couple of them. And it's been kind of fun as a family to dig that thing out every now and again and do, harvesting the old-fashioned way, if you will. But it just sits there, unlike the combines in the game, which travel through the field and harvest the crop, kind of munching through it as it goes. Well, this would be a combine that just sits there in place, and you have to bring the crop to it, to feed into it. So it would take some effort to set up the crops so that it could be done that way, to make other, be one thing if you have a stationary threshing machine. Well, you'd also need a binder. Those things in the old days that would cut the grain and would bind it, and leave it in bundles, and would have to be the grain would be put into shocks, and so it could dry, and later you come through and pick it up in a wagon and then feed them a bundle at a time into the threshing machine. But probably given enough time and effort, a lot of those bugs could be worked out. I think that'd make for an interesting mod. And then the stationary threshing machine, it didn't power itself as a general rule. At least I don't remember seeing one that came with its own engine on it. Maybe some of them did. They typically were powered by a tractor of some kind. In the early days, it had been a steam engine. I know on the farm when we've done reenactments of it, we've used a Model D John Deere to run the threshing machine. They had this big wheel kind of on the side of the tractor that you hook up this enormous belt to, and one end, of course, goes on the wheel on the tractor, and that's the motive power, and then the other end of the belt goes on the threshing machine, to run all of its bells and whistles, if you will. So if a threshing machine was made, then it'd be pretty cool to make a steam engine along with it too, to run that part of it. And obviously to make steam, you'd have to feed it. We're so used to putting fuel in the tractors in here, but a steam engine would have required something different. Maybe oil or coal even, or wood. All depends on what they had available, plus water. So I don't know if this will ever come to fruition. Like I say, I have a list of modding ideas and things I'd like to do that's a mile long. Probably everybody does some pet thing that they would just love to have in game that isn't there currently. But I'd be curious to know what's on your list. And if you could make a mod and have the skills and time to do it, what would it be? And is there anybody that's ever tried to make a mod close to, what your idea would be, or similar enough that you've, given it a try but someone else has made, or is it just kind of not something out there? The area where I live, it's a pretty diverse area when it comes to agriculture, so there's a lot of things here that just provide food for one's dreams. Whether it's a pea harvester, for fresh peas, or a bean picker, green bean picker. I don't know that anybody's ever installed green beans in a map, and if they have, well, they probably called up some combine or forced a combine to harvest it, when combine really doesn't harvest green beans. If it harvests green beans, it'd be with them totally dried, and they're harvesting it for the seeds, not for the bean itself. And there's probably any number of other types of ag machines that could be mentioned. Just a question of feasibility as to whether you could do it in the game and get it to cooperate. Well, that's a couple fields down for the count. Let me see, where do I go from? Oh yeah, I think it's over to our pasture. I think I've done all the fields that we own on this side of Gelvin Valley, so head back down the hill and continue in pasture. I know in one of these episodes I kind of started off one by taking a look at the old game Ascend Farm. Shoot, that thing is 30 years old, give or take. It's an old game, and it had all sorts of crops in there. You know, some of which we have in farming sim, but a lot of which we don't. And you know, so I've even wondered about a mod for a people mod. You know, if you have an orchard, well, orchards with fruit or something that you know may need human hands to pick it. I know there's some orchards that use machinery for picking the fruit and whatnot, but not all of it. Certainly not all of it. So, but the logistics of having that, you know, we've seen people in game, they walk on a spline, the pedestrians or whatever. How would you get that person to show up in a field, or a whole group of them, a whole horde of people, if you will, to pick it? How, you know, just there's a lot of issues. There's no way I could figure that one out. There's probably somebody out there that could. Maybe the modder that made the trusty sheep that we have in here, maybe he could figure it out. But unfortunately, I don't think he mods anymore, so kind of. But there may be others that could figure it out. They're getting more and more innovations in farming sim as time goes by, so maybe someone at some point will figure out a way to do that. I know the orchard type mods that I've seen so far, including the ones that I think I have on the map right now, they are, it's just like another field type. So to harvest them, quote unquote, you just drive a trailer underneath the tree and it drops its fruit magically into your trailer. I mean, wouldn't it be great if in real life it did that too? Alas, it doesn't, but that's how some of the mods have kind of handled it. Maybe you just pretend there's someone on the back of your trailer standing there picking the fruit. I don't know. Well, I look at the time here and another half hour's gone by, so I think I'll stop the episode there, kind of right by the stream over here. Coming down Gelvin Valley, we're kind of at the bottom of the hill, if you will. Thank you for taking time to watch, and I wish you all a wonderful day wherever you're at, and we'll see you again soon sometime. Bye-bye for now.